Have you ever really thought about how a new medicine actually gets made? You know, how it goes from just an idea in a lab to something you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Well, it's this incredibly long journey. We're talking over a decade, billions of dollars, and a failure rate that's like almost 90%. So how does any new treatment get through that? Let's get into it. Right, this is the big question. How does a scientific discovery become a life-saving treatment? It's not just a straight shot. It's more like a super carefully planned maze with all these different checkpoints built in, just to make absolutely sure that the medicines we depend on are both safe and effective. See, the path from the lab to the patient isn't some giant leap. It's really a step-by-step climb. It all begins with basic research and then moves through these very distinct phases of human trials. And each step is its own checkpoint, designed to build on what was learned before it, gathering more and more proof about safety and effectiveness as it goes. So where does this whole thing kick off? Well, it's not with people. It all starts in the lab, in what they call the preclinical phase. This is the absolute foundation for everything that comes next. Okay, so in this phase, scientists are running all sorts of experiments. First, they're using cell cultures in petri dishes. That's called in vitro testing, which literally means in glass. If that looks promising, then they might move on to animal models, which is in vivo testing, or in a living organism. The goal here is pretty simple. Does the science actually check out, and are there any huge safety red flags right off the bat? At this point, the researchers are asking some really specific questions. They're looking for any sign of toxicity, like is this stuff poisonous at certain doses? They're also studying its pharmacology, which is kind of like a two-way street. What does the body do to the drug, and what does the drug do to the body? Only the compounds that look safe and seem to behave in a predictable way get the green light to move on. All right, so after a potential treatment makes it out of the lab, it hits this massive milestone, the very first time it's tested in human beings. This is where the stakes get way, way higher, and as you can imagine, the whole process is handled with extreme caution. Now, before we even hit phase 1, there's sometimes this optional step called phase 0. It's pretty interesting. They give a tiny, and I mean tiny, like less than 1% of the real dose to just a handful of people. It's a super low-risk way to just double-check that the drug acts in humans the same way it did in the lab. It basically helps researchers make a quick go or no-go decision before they pour tons of money into a full trial. So once a drug clears that first little check, it officially enters phase 1. And at this stage, there is one single question that is more important than anything else. Is this compound safe for people? Seriously, for now, we're not even worried about if it works. Safety is priority number 1. So in phase 1, a small group, usually around 20 to 100 people, and they're often healthy volunteers, they get the drug. Researchers watch them like a hawk to figure out a safe dosage range, pinpoint any common side effects, and just get a better understanding of how the body processes the drug. The information they get here is the bedrock for all the other phases to come. Okay, so the drug is proven to be safe enough to keep going. Now, finally, we get to the next big question, the one we've all been waiting for. Does this thing actually work? Welcome to phase 2. This is a huge shift in the whole process. We're moving away from testing on healthy volunteers and starting to test for effectiveness in people who actually have the condition the drug is supposed to treat. For the very first time, researchers can ask, does this actually help patients? Now, to make sure the effects they're seeing are real, phase 2 trials often bring in a control group that gets a placebo. You've heard of this, right? It's just an inactive substance, like a sugar pill. By comparing the results between the two groups, researchers can feel confident that the benefits they're seeing are from the drug itself, and not just in people's heads. So yeah, phase 2 is all about getting that first real proof that this concept works. Does it do what it's supposed to? And is it still safe in a bigger group of actual patients? Getting a yes here is a huge deal. It's a powerful signal that tells everyone this drug might actually be worth the massive, massive investment that a phase 3 trial is going to require. And that brings us to the big one, the largest, most complicated, and by far most expensive part of the whole journey before a drug can even be considered for approval. This is the final hurdle, phase 3. When I say massive, I mean it. These are often huge international trials with hundreds, sometimes thousands of patients. Just think back to the COVID-19 vaccine trials. Those were phase 3 trials happening on a global scale. The whole point here is to get absolutely definitive proof.
To make sure the results are as solid as they can possibly be, phase 3 trials use what's called the gold standard of scientific methods: randomization and blinding. So participants are randomly put into groups to get either the new drug or the old one. And get this, often neither the patient nor the doctor knows who is getting which treatment until the very end. This is a brilliant way to stop any kind of bias from creeping in and messing with the results.
So this is it, the moment of truth. All the data, and there's a mountain of it, that's gathered in phase 3 gets submitted to regulatory agencies like the FDA. This is the final definitive case to prove that for a whole lot of people, this drug's benefits are clearly greater than its risks. If it's a success here, the finish line is finally in sight.
But wait, the story isn't actually over once the drug hits the pharmacy shelves. The monitoring keeps going in what's called phase 4, or you might hear it called post-market surveillance.
See, once a drug is being used by millions of people out there in the real world, researchers can suddenly spot really rare or long-term side effects that just wouldn't have shown up in even the biggest phase 3 trial. This constant vigilance is absolutely crucial for public health, and, sometimes it even leads to a drug being pulled from the market years after it was approved. So, when you put this all together, what does this whole journey add up to? On average, more than 10 years. Over a decade from that very first spark of an idea in a lab to a medicine a doctor can actually prescribe. That's a full decade of nonstop research, testing, and validation. And the failure rate? It's just staggering. Out of all the drugs that make it to that first phase of human trials, only about 12% will ever cross the finish line and get approved. Think about that. That means nearly 9 out of 10 promising new medicines fail somewhere along this path. It just goes to show you how incredibly tough this whole filtering process is. And, throughout this entire long, difficult process, we really can't forget the most important part of it all. None of this, not a single breakthrough we have, would even be possible without the thousands and thousands of patient volunteers who sign up for these trials. They are, without a doubt, the true heroes of medical progress. So let's just do a quick recap of the journey, because each phase has a role that nothing else can replace. Phase 1 is the critical safety gatekeeper. Phase 2 points out the promising candidates that are actually worth betting on. Phase 3 gives us the definitive proof that's needed for approval. And finally, Phase 4 acts like a lifelong watchdog, protecting all of us for the long haul. This whole path, it's so carefully engineered. It's built on science, and it's driven by people. And it's all there to make sure the treatments we rely on are truly worthy of our trust. It's a system designed to protect us and to help us move forward. Understanding how it all works doesn't just demystify medicine, it empowers all of us. Which just makes you wonder, what breakthrough will make it through this journey next?